This is part of a series of videos on root cause analysis, and in this video, we'll be looking at some of the final considerations that you make after you've completed root cause analysis. Some of the final checks that I take a look at the end of the analyze phase of a DMAIC-based project. But these final checks could be used at the end of any group-based root cause analysis session. The learning objectives will be to take a look at two criteria that I consider before making a final root cause determination. And then some facilitation techniques to help with a commonly misidentified root cause I sometimes call the lack of training trap. We'll take a look at ways as a facilitator you can work through that common trap. So you've worked with your team and you've used the various root cause analysis tools and techniques, whether it's 5Y or fishbone diagrams or a CDEC exercise, and you've determined root causes. What I always let team members know is that we'll be taking these root causes into the improve phase for a DMAIC-based project to start to identify possible solutions. But before we move on to the analyze phase, I like to have a little check-in session where we make sure that what we've come up with is truly the most appropriate root causes. And the way that I start is I remind the team that we started with focus areas. These were areas within the process that were most broken. There's a separate video that we've got on identifying those focus areas that you identify at the end of the define and measure phases. We started with focus areas. We used those focus areas to determine root cause. And it's not always a one-to-one match, but it's a close to one-to-one match. When you walk into the analyze phase with, let's say, 4 focus areas, like in this example, it's not unusual to see something like this, where there will be some overlap. Different focus areas will have a variety of different root causes, but some of the focus areas will point to the similar root cause identified in a different focus area. So not always one-to-one, but pretty darn close. When you walk in with 4 focus areas, I'm not expecting teams to walk out with 122 root causes. If that happens, the team has gone the team has probably gone past what our 3 considerations are for determining root cause. And that was a topic that we discussed in an earlier video when we explored 5Y. For each one of these root causes that have been identified, so we started with focus areas, we got to root cause. The next thing that I want to perform is I want to check to see if 2 things are present in each of the root causes that we determined. It's like a little checkbox exercise. First criteria that I'm looking for is I want to know if we have access to some data that supports the root causes that we've determined. Now, this could be qualitative data. It doesn't have to be quantitative data, but if it's quantitative, that's great. If it's both, that's even better. I want to make sure that there's some data that supports each one of these root causes. And if you're running a DMAIC style project, this will always be the case. We will always have data for each of these root causes. The reason why I have the check for data though is we're not always running DMAIC style projects. And it's very easy for individuals who maybe have had just a high level process improvement overview training to give teams or individuals a problem and then say, let's do a root cause analysis session on that problem. And if this is a complex business problem, we can't jump straight from the problems to root causes. We have to go on this quest for collecting data in current state. So I do a data check, not so much because teams running DMAIC projects won't have it, it's for the rest of the world that's done root causes. And I need this data because we're going to take each one of these root causes and in the next phase, in the improve phase, we're going to come up with a suite of solutions that attack, eliminate, or reduce the impact that this root cause has. And it's going to cost time and money from the organization. And they're going to want to know, why are we spending money on this solution? Why Is it attacking this particular root cause? And that data is going to help support why it's important for this type of solution development. The data is going to be used to help make a case for the solutions. This first column, very easy. Teams will always have that data. And you know what? If they don't, if for some reason we jump straight to root cause without going through the process of getting data in advance, well, then I'll just ask the team, hey, if we don't have the data now, let's take a little step back, go back to the measure phase, craft out some CTQs, and either collect that quantitative data or take a further step back to the define phase and get some of that qualitative data to support this root cause. It's not that the root cause is bad, I just need some supporting data so that I can go back and convert this to something that has data. The second check, though, is one that I typically get a little bit more pushback from. For every one of the root causes, I also want to check on this criteria. I want to see if any of the root causes are a modification of the phrase lack of training. You know, this particular root cause has happened because we need to train those folks in our customer service department, or this particular root cause is needed because our doctors haven't gotten sufficient training, or this root cause is because our delivery drivers have gotten a lack of training. Anytime I hear the phrase lack of training as a root cause and I see a check mark associated with it, I know I need to do more work as a facilitator. So I want to be clear on this. Lack of training cannot be a root cause. And for every root cause that has that check mark, I know I'm going to need to do some additional facilitation before I accept that root cause. Lack of training is a symptom to a deeper underlying root cause. And honestly, lack of training is just a fancy process improvement speak way of saying we don't really have a problem with this process. We just have a problem with those ignorant or stupid people. We're calling it a people-based problem and not a process-based problem. I do also want to be clear when I say lack of training can't be a root cause. I don't want folks to think that training isn't important. Training will always be one of the activities that we perform in future state. In the control phase, when we start to standardize the future state solution, we will always include some form of training. Training is a very important part of gaining buy-in and user acceptance and standardizing future state. But lack of training can't be a root cause. There's a deeper underlying root cause beneath that. And I, as a facilitator, have to dig to find the root cause to this higher level symptomatic lack of training statement. And there are three techniques that I use when I'm drilling down for lack of training as the root cause. And I want to go over each one of them. If I have a team that says lack of training is the root cause, one facilitation technique that I will drill down on is complexity. So if a team says what we need to do is we need to train those customer service reps, that's the root cause for our poorly performing process characteristic. I will then ask the team, help me to understand then, if we do train them, why is the process so complex that we need to train them to be the wise and delicate geniuses that have to perform this activity? Why is the process so complex that we need all of this extra training? And from there, we drill down, just like in any 5 why type session. I'll drill down on complexity, getting the feedback and results. We'll grab our most impactful statement, and then I'll continue to drill down until we've nailed the real root cause. But that root cause is buried into the complexity of the current state system. Sometimes, though, it's not about complexity. So as a facilitator, I'll reframe it a different way. I'll ask the following drill down question. Why are we allowing people to perform this activity without the prerequisite training? If we know that there are certain skills or competencies that the individual needs to have to be successful with this task or this particular process step, why are we allowing people to perform this activity without this prerequisite training that we know is so important? If if we know they need training and we know what the training needs to be about and we're not giving that training to individuals, we're just setting them up for failure. So why are we allowing folks to perform the activity without prerequisite training? We'll then drill down for the deeper underlying root cause to that particular scenario. The third condition is maybe it's not about complexity, maybe it's not about allowing people to perform activity without the prerequisite skills needed. The third characteristic could be the following. We know that no matter how good the training curriculum is and how impactful the instructor is and how attentive the student or individual is, that there is retention lost over time. And people forget the things that they learn. Training is often a temporary fix to a process that's around for the long term. People will frequently lose 50% of the knowledge that they obtain in a in-person classroom setting in as little as 1 to 2 weeks, but yet they're performing this process activity for months, sometimes for years. In other situations, they've gotten the training and they've started to lose some of the concepts they learned in that training, but new folks are being brought in that didn't get the training. So we drill down on the temporariness that training has, and that not everybody has received that training. I'll use these three tools to make sure that lack of training is not what the root cause is, that it's something else, something with deeper meaning. And then I change my original grid so it's not a check for lack of training. Instead, it's now a check for no lack of training as a root cause. And assuming that none of them have lack of training as a root cause, and we have data for each one of them, we're ready to take those root causes onto the improve phase for solution development.